Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock, and I would like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with an invocation led by Councilmember Testerman, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Vice Mayor Roberto. Please rise as you're able.
We gather here today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faiths give us strength to act honestly, and as servant leaders remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the service of our community. May we act in a spirit of goodwill to fulfill the needs of others.
Please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Johnson, would you please call roll?
Councilwoman Fugit. Councilwoman McKenzie.
Here.
Councilwoman Parker.
Here.
Councilwoman Ryder. Vice Mayor Roberto.
Here.
Councilwoman Singh.
Here.
Councilman Smith.
Here.
Councilwoman Testerman.
Here.
And Councilman Thomas.
Here.
8 members present.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on the minutes from May 16th?
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. For tonight's agenda, are there any items to be withdrawn? Are there any items to be postponed? Are there any items requested to be added by motion? Is there a motion on the consent items?
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve the consent items. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So now, time for my mayor's report. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you. I wanted to share with you some really good news we had over the long holiday weekend. Early Saturday morning, the Knoxville Fire Department had its first ever baby box alert at Station 17. The crew immediately went to the box and found a healthy baby boy inside. The child was transported to the hospital and is in good condition tonight. The baby box was installed in February, and it is the first in Tennessee. At the time of installation, we said if just one life was saved from this box, it would be worth it. And I can tell you, when I got the phone call about this, it was a relief to know this resource was in our city and likely saved this baby's life. So again, the baby box is designed to be an anonymous surrender for any parent who needs a place to turn in a time of crisis. So thank you to our firefighters, and Chief Cheeseman is here with us this evening. Thank you to the firefighters who've trained to use this baby box and who acted quickly this weekend. It's a round of applause for our firefighters who saved a baby's life. Also, council members, you already have this on your calendars, I'm sure, but 2 days from now, we have our next community open house meeting. This one is out in West Knoxville, Thursday, June 1st, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at Bearden Middle School. Residents are invited to attend anytime during the event to talk to city staff and partner representatives about projects located in West Knoxville. Some of those projects include improvements on Pleasant Ridge Road, KUB fiber internet, Kingston Pike Complete Connections, Lakeshore Park and West Hills Park, neighborhood traffic calming, and more. You can go to knoxvilletn.gov, West Knoxville, for more information on the open house. So I hope to see you all there. And also, another big event that's coming up just around the corner, we are gearing up for the long-awaited groundbreaking for the new multi-use stadium. This brief ceremony is slated for 9 o'clock in the morning, June 13th, at 400 East Jackson Avenue. We hope to see you all there. And before we move on, I want to say a big thank you to Jeff Welch. Jeff, this is I believe, your last council meeting as director of the Knox County Planning Department. Jeff, you graciously stepped into this role after 35 years with planning, and in addition to the 35 years in various roles as executive director of TPO and then stepping into executive director of the whole department, you've done tremendous work and you have my respect and the respect of your peers across the community. So please join me in thanking Jeff Welch for his service. And a quick reminder for those who wish to speak, either to a specific agenda item or during public forum, should sign up with Mr. Johnson, our city recorder, ahead of time. And council rules state that up to 3 people each may speak for or against an agenda item. And right now, many more than 3 people have signed up for item 11C. So I would ask the various people who signed up to consider huddling in the back of the room and confirm which 3 speakers you would like to prioritize on this topic before we get to that item. And other rules to follow in public forum and other times you're speaking at the podium, please do not use profanity. And when speaking to specific agenda items, please remember to stay on topic. Those who fail to adhere to these rules may be ruled out of order and asked to step away from the podium. For those who are listening, please note that you may not disrupt a public meeting from the audience. Those who do may be asked to leave. Thank you in advance for everyone's respect for these rules, and that concludes my mayor's report. Are there any reports from council members or committees? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted the public to know on June 22nd in this room at 3 o'clock, the KTA board will meet and review the second draft of CAT Reimagined. So that will be in June on the 22nd in this room at 3 o'clock. So I welcome the public and any council members to attend.
Thank you. Any other reports from council members? Just a matter of technical difficulties. Apparently the screen behind me is not working. I don't know why people are being asked about it, but it might not be fixed during this meeting. So apologies for that. You can follow on your phone. Mr. Johnson will let us know if it can be fixed during the course of the meeting. All right, moving on to item 8.
8A is a resolution confirming the mayor's nomination to reappoint Amy Midas and Tim Hill and to appoint Miles Biggs, all contingent on state approval, to the Knoxville-Knox County Planning Commission, formerly known as the Metropolitan Planning Commission.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. I believe Mr. Hill and Mr. Biggs are here. You all could raise your hand. Where's thank you all both for your willingness to continue serving and for Miles Biggs for your willingness to start serving on this important board. We're very grateful. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9A is an ordinance making and fixing the annual appropriations for the several departments, agencies, and funds of the City of Knoxville for the fiscal period beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30, 2024, and providing the authority to reappropriate non-project-related encumbrances at the end of fiscal year 2022-2023 into fiscal year 2023-2024.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Ryder.
Yeah, I just wanted to get out in the public record. Mr. Brace, we had some conversations about some concerns about staffing funding for the building department and some of the delays in processing because of a huge work volume and there's some staffing and there's some recommendations from the consultants to staff up a little bit larger than what's proposed in the budget. So can we just talk about that and what is and isn't being addressed in this budget?
Yeah,
How you want it.
absolutely. I mean, I'll just give you the brief overview. This budget does include 2 new positions, and council approved another new position during a budget amendment in the spring. So we've added a total, if you all approve this tonight, it'll add 3 new positions. Is that right, Mr. Brace?
Yes.
And then we're also in the process of, trying to improve the digitization of plans, reviews, and inspections. And we're also already have a contract out to, we do have a backlog. Business has been good. A lot of people want to invest in our city. And that backlog, we're going to hire an outside entity to help us address that backlog. So with the new positions, with the outside help, and the automation, which in theory should make things easier for our customers, we're going to wait and then in 6 months reevaluate. And if we still believe at that time we need more permanent positions added to the city staff to address these permits, then we'll evaluate that and bring a proposal to council middle of the year. Is there anything to add, Mr. Brace?
Mayor Kincaid, you may mention later in the meeting, there's an ordinance recommendation to move neighborhood codes from Mr. Aaron's shop and building inspections to public service. This is kind of twofold. One is to better connect our neighborhood codes enforcement officers with the managers and foremen that are out in the neighborhoods every day, but it's also to allow Mr. Aaron's and his team time to strictly focus on new investments. So that is a fourth portion of how we want to make that better, Councilwoman Ryder.
I appreciate it. So I appreciate hearing about tapping into some consultants or contracts that kind of helps address the surge and then reevaluating as we get into the year to see how that flow is going. It's great news that everybody wants to build something here. It's hard on the employees as well as the folks wanting to do the work if we can't provide the services. I think as, I know Mr. Cannon said it before at the last meeting, the city doesn't get to turn away projects like private industry does. We have to serve and give out permits and review plans, and it's just been a big challenge of late. And folks come to us and complain, they go to you guys and complain, and they complain to the staff. And so I appreciate that you guys are working on some solutions to address the backlog.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to my colleagues for allowing an extension, allowing a postponement for the second vote so that we could have a little bit more time to ask questions. I appreciated that time and was able to develop some clarity around a few issues, definitely not all issues represented in the budget, but still had some pretty significant concerns that I've been able to express to the administration. One of those is the level of investment that we're seeing in our housing versus other parts of our budget. We've been able to increase the level of funding going towards housing with some federal dollars that have come available, and so now we're seeing those budget numbers decrease in our budget, but meanwhile we're seeing other parts of our budget continue to increase, in particular public safety. And I feel as a city we're missing an opportunity to address some root causes in our community that could actually take the load off of our public safety officials. And that's where I would like to see more investment. One thing that I talked to the administration about is that in this extreme housing crisis that so many cities and states are experiencing, other areas have decided to, rather than commit, as we are, 5 million or more this year, it's a little over 7 million, towards affordable housing each year, they've made a large commitment of, perhaps 100 million that can be spent in a shorter amount of time to bring many more affordable housing units online more quickly than if they had spread that goal out over a 10-year plan. And I'm worried if we do not make such commitments, that we will continue to see folks in our community get pushed out of our city, folks in our community who are experiencing extremely desperate financial situations, which leads to some of those public safety issues that we're experiencing. Other cities have been able to invest those dollars through municipal bonds, which is how we pay for our public facilities. These are things that we are able to budget for over time and spend down over time. It's the, I think one of the lowest interest rates you can get for these types of projects. So that's what I would like to see moving forward, is that we are not settling on a plan for affordable housing that was acceptable a few years ago, but that we're responding to the immediacy, the urgency of this moment. So I would like to see that increased in our budget. I'm concerned about our commitment to Title VI and to preventing discrimination in our community. We have this new report that was just shared with us from the Knoxville Area Association of Realtors, and one thing that struck me when I was thumbing through that report was the level of discrimination racial minorities, particularly Black members of our community, are experiencing in the housing market, and our obligation as a city to address when members of our community are struggling to access housing. There are other parts of the budget that I have concerns with, and I'm hoping to make, a proposal. I'm not going to make a proposal tonight. I'm not going to propose a budget amendment tonight. But as we continue to talk about needed services in our city, I hope that council and the administration will remain open to budget amendments that will address those needs.
Thank you. Councilmember Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to comment on, thank you, Councilwoman Ryder, for your comments. That I have a question about, you said staffing was increased by 2 positions?
Yes.
What was requested?
Mr.
believe
Brace, can you
6
tell me off the...
Positions were requested.
I'd have to look at the exact number. It ranged between 7 and 12. Some of those, it was the matrix report and how we actually looked at some other resources in the city and planning. But the number was around 7. And again, we added 1 in a budget amendment. We've got 2 in this budget. And I think what, the mayor had discussed previously was we could add 20 right now, but by the time those individuals get on board, get trained and up to speed, it doesn't help our backlog. So what we have in the interim is a contract right now, a small contract with Keenan & Cannon to help with those reviews. We will be bringing City Council a larger contract to go ahead and try to get the backlog worked through, get these individuals hired, trained, and then we'll reevaluate and see where we are at.
So I think this housing urgency that both Councilwoman Ryder and Parker were talking about is our number one concern in Knoxville right now. By the time we would have trained and had some, 6 other members working, I think right now we're just playing catch up. This is going to continue. This isn't going to end anytime soon. And it's time for kind of throwing everything in. Yes, it's affordable housing, but it's also the middle housing. And it's time for some radical solutions and to really focus our resources on this. There are so many people I know that are stuck in bad situations in housing or in no housing bad situations. And they're just stuck. I mean, it's all levels of income, too, mostly. Thank you.
Well, Councilmember Singh, thanks for those comments. I would just say, yes, I recognize that we are in a housing crisis. Kevin DuBose is a relatively new Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development, and one of the top priorities I've asked him to do is develop a housing strategy and how we do some things differently and faster and, address these. Yeah, and yet, at the same time, I do want to say that we, this council and this administration, have done more to invest in affordable housing than ever in the history of the city. I'm really proud of that. I think we're going to see some things opening soon. First Creek at Austin continues to, build out their spaces. Transforming Western, is moving apace. So we're not doing nothing by a long shot. We're doing a lot, but I don't disagree. And when
Mayor,
Mr. DeBoer.
I think we're doing good things,
Yeah.
but this is a crisis situation when in all of the country, we're one of the worst markets. We're doing one of the worst in the whole country. So, I was trying to figure out, well, what is our responsibility? What did the city, if the city government has a role in this, where did we fall down in this disaster?
Yeah, well, I'd say a lot of it is the market,
I agree.
Yeah,
That
but,
is a big
yeah.
factor. This is a free market, and
Yeah.
we cannot control that. But, yeah, I'm just very concerned what our part is and what we can do differently.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Roberto.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I agree with what my colleagues have been talking about. This is kind of an extension of conversation that we had in our legislative budget hearings that really is dealing with affordability. And what you're hearing is the effects of supply and demand. If I remember correctly, I think Plans Review had two positions that they were asking to be filled that hadn't been. And I'm very encouraged to hear about the looking at the backlog, because obviously we need to deal with that. I think we also need to look at whether or not we need a budget amendment to add those two additional folks with Plans Review. I think what was being said is that we do a really good job with public-private partnerships to encourage housing, and we need to continue to do that. But there's a limit to how much we can actually accomplish there. The bigger piece of this is encouraging the private sector to do this, and because we just can't do enough supply ourselves on our own. So we need to address that by dealing with the backlog and then decreasing the time that people are dealing with permits, and then using some of our tools to encourage mixed use along the corridors where we have a lot of access to transportation and other amenities that we can then use to continue to build the housing that we really desperately need. So I just want to say I agree with what all of you are saying. We are doing some good things, and we need to do some more as well. And I know the mayor is committed to doing that, and I am too. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
9B is an ordinance to levy a tax on all taxable properties, real, personal, and mixed, within the corporate limits of the City of Knoxville to provide sufficient revenues to fund the general fund and debt service fund operations and debt service obligations of the City of Knoxville for the fiscal period beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I had some questions around the number of vacancies we have. I think, Ms. Gill, we traded some emails back and forth. Mr. Evans, thank you for spending time for me to help me understand this. It's my understanding that if we have any vacancies at the end of the year, the compensation for those vacancies rolls into the unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. Is that correct?
Boyce Evans, CFO for the City of Knoxville. That's correct. If you got, it's commonly called hire lag vacancies, because we budget for spaces, not faces. If you have that, by the time overtime is applied against it and any other shortfalls that you might have had, anything that is extra goes into unassigned fund balance.
Right.
That is correct.
And anything that's extra within that budget rolls into those applicable departments. Is that right? Before the unassigned fund balance?
Yes, unassigned fund balance is the last place
Right.
the money goes.
Okay. And I just want to call out that I think that's about $4.3 million based on what I was given. And I just want to highlight that, I'll support this budget. I plan on supporting this as well. I do realize we raise taxes, property taxes. We still have very low property taxes, but we raise those. And in an effort to avoid doing that for as long as we can, there is some savings here. And so we've chosen collectively to put that in the budget for next year and not to save those dollars. I just want to make sure that we don't touch any of the unassigned fund balance when we have some of that discretionary funding. So that $4.3 million that was left over from the vacancy savings, we're choosing to disperse that to the individual departments applicably. So I want to make sure that we don't touch the unassigned fund balance.
But I don't think that's an accurate description of, Mr.
well,
Boyd, Mr. Evans.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, let's take a look at it here. We did this at a point in time, I think it was on the 8th of May, 8th of this month, and we had, for the vacancies that existed at that time, and those go up and down daily, because people are always being hired, people are always leaving, okay? But it was around 9.867 million, okay? Well, the projected overtime, annualized overtime, in excess of the budget for the entirety of the FY would be 5.2 million. So you track 9.867, 5.213, and then you got to take out the delta from the projected, in other words, revenues less expenses, and that's about 3.915 million due to higher than normal operating costs due to inflation. And you're left with around 738K projected operating balance just in that area for FY23, and that does roll into unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, so my only point is that vacancy savings dollars that is not spent on personnel rose into each departmental budget for whatever projects are remaining for that. So we spend that excess personnel budget at the end of the year. And so what I'm saying is, that's fine, but we shouldn't be using unassigned fund balance in any near future if that's the case, because I want to prevent having to raise taxes as long as
Well,
we can.
we don't spend it. Anything to spend unassigned fund balance comes to you all on council.
Yeah, and I'm referring to the operating budget, not the unassigned fund balance.
I'm not following you.
Well, that's okay, but I'm just going to want to put out there that we spend unused dollars that we do not spend on employees that are unhired. We spend that on other projects in the operating budget. And what I'm saying is we should be very careful and try to save that when possible. We're not doing it in this budget.
Okay, I think that's not exactly my understanding of what it is a little different, but just wanted to point out, though, that the whole point of, raising taxes was to address shortcomings where we had a high level of vacancies in public service, high level of vacancies in finance and police and some in fire, and to a great extent, those raises have been effective in filling out our ranks. And so our department directors do not want, our chiefs and our directors want to fill their ranks, and in many cases want more people.
That's right.
So they're highly motivated to hire and retain good quality people. And now, because of the compensation study, that has been a huge help. So there's always some turmoil or lag in hiring, and so those savings just go back to unassigned fund balance. If they're unused for overtime, for example. But it's not like they're using money that was allocated to salary to buy furniture and computers or something like that. Anyhow,
Okay?
any
That's
other?
not my understanding either, but go ahead.
Okay. Your bigger point is well taken. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9C is an ordinance of the Council of the City of Knoxville to amend Chapter 2, Article 3, Sections 2-450, 2-458, and 2-459 of the Knoxville City Code to adjust classification and compensation plans.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
9D is an ordinance to close a portion of an unnamed alley between St. Mary's Street and Huron Street, subject to one condition, and authorizing the mayor to execute quitclaim deeds to the adjacent property owners, City of Knoxville applicant, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9E is an ordinance approving the request of Winterpast Development LLC, Dennis Norvert, for an amendment to the Northwest County Sector Plan from office to light industrial for property located at 1301 East Weisgarber Road, 3rd District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9F is an ordinance approving the request of Winterpass Development LLC, Dennis Norvert, for a one-year plan amendment from office to light industrial for a property located at 1301 East Weisgarber Road, 3rd District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9G is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification for property located at 1301 East Weisgarber Road from O District to IMU District. Winterpass Development LLC, Dennis Norvert, applicant, 3rd District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9H is an ordinance approving the request of Benjamin C. Mullins for an amendment to the East City Sector Plan from light industrial to mixed-use special district Magnolia Avenue for property located at 0 Nash Road and for portions of 3 properties located at 0 Pelham Road, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged, 6th District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9I is an ordinance approving the request of Benjamin C. Mullins for a one-year plan amendment from light industrial to mixed-use special district Magnolia Avenue for property located at 0 Nash Road and for portions of 3 properties located at 0 Pelham Road, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged, 6th District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9J is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 0 McCalla Avenue, 288, 308, 330 Pelham Road, and portions of property located at 0, 305, 309, 317, and 325 Pelham Road from CG2 District to CH2 District, and to change the base zoning of property located at 0 Nash Road and portions of property located at 0 Pelham Road from IG District to CH2 District, leaving all special purpose and overlay districts unchanged. Benjamin C. Mullins, applicant, 6th District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9K is an ordinance approving the request of Merchant Holdings LLC for an amendment to the Northwest City Sector Plan from low-density residential to medium-density residential office for a portion of property located at 2400 Merchant Drive, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9L is an ordinance approving the request of Merchant Holdings LLC for a one-year plan amendment from low-density residential to medium-density residential office for a portion of property located at 2400 Merchant Drive, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9M is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification for a portion of property located at 2400 Merchant Drive from CN and AG districts to RN6 District. Merchant Holdings LLC, applicant, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9N is an ordinance approving the request of Taylor D. Forrester for an amendment to the South County Sector Plan from low-density residential to mixed-use special district Alcoa Highway Small Area Plan for a portion of property located at 0 Dresser Road, 1st District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9O is an ordinance to approving the request of Taylor D. Forrester for a one-year plan amendment from low-density residential to mixed-use special district Alcoa Highway Small Area Plan for a portion of property located at 0 Dresser Road, 1st District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9P is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification for a portion of property located at 0 Dresser Road from RN1 District to CG1 District. Taylor D. Forrester, applicant, First District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9Q is an ordinance approving the request of Urban Engineering Incorporated for an amendment to the Southwest County Sector Plan from medium-density residential to medium-density residential office for property located at 355 South Gallaher View Road, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged. Second District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9R is an ordinance approving the request of Urban Engineering Incorporated for a one-year plan amendment from medium-density residential to medium-density residential office for property located at 355 South Gallaher View Road, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged. Second District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9S is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 355 South Gallaher View Road from OP District to RN6 District, leaving all special purpose and overlay districts unchanged. Urban Engineering Incorporated, applicant, Second District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9T is an ordinance approving the request of Chris Burkhart for an amendment to the East City Sector Plan from low-density residential to light industrial for property located at 0 Old State Road and a portion of property located at 299 Nash Road, as shown on Exhibit A, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged. Sixth District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Just for members of the audience, these are all items on second reading, so they were examined for 2 weeks ago as well, which is why it may be fewer questions now. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9U is an ordinance approving the request of Chris Burkhart for a one-year plan and amendment from low-density residential to light industrial for property located at 0 Old State Road and a portion of property located at 299 Nash Road, as shown on Exhibit A, leaving any special purpose land use classification unchanged. Sixth District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9V is an ordinance to change the base zoning of property located at 0 Old State Road and a portion of property located at 299 Nash Road, as shown on Exhibit A, from RN1 District to IG District, leaving all special purpose and overlay districts unchanged. Chris Burkhart, applicant, Sixth District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9W is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 0 Central Avenue Pike from AG District to RN3 District, leaving all special purpose and overlay districts unchanged. Robert Gregory, applicant, Fifth District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9X is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 513 Cooper Street from IG District to IMU District. Jeffrey Nash, applicant, Sixth District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11A is a resolution to add the honorary name Big John Tate Corner to Lakeside Street at its northern intersection with Magnolia Avenue.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Oh, we have someone signed up to speak to this. Okay. Mr. William Winnett.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, if you could please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to address council.
Oh, perfect. My name is William Winnett, 6315 Bright Star Way, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37912. And lived in East Tennessee my entire life, spent my formative years in East Knoxville. I'm a proud graduate of Austin East High School. And growing up here in East Tennessee, you love football, you love basketball. I loved boxing. And growing up, my mother used to tell me stories about the heavyweight champion from Knoxville, Big John Tate. And I chose photojournalism as a career. And once I realized I could use my platform to tell the stories that meant something to me, the first big project I pursued was the story of Big John Tate, his life, his career. And I learned that he grew up illiterate. He couldn't read, he couldn't write, but he could punch. And that punch led him to Knoxville, to the Golden Gloves gym in Chohawi Park. It led him to a bronze medal in the Olympics. It led him to the World Heavyweight Championship in 1979. The fight was in South Africa during apartheid, during segregation. And his fight, his heavyweight championship fight, was held in a stadium that was desegregated for the first time for that fight. 80,000 people came to see Big John Tate win the heavyweight championship, and he brought it back to Knoxville. Mr. Robert Booker said that Big John Tate was the biggest thing to come out of Knoxville until the World's Fair. And he had a championship fight here. He lost, and then his life kind of spiraled. It was tragic. He battled with addiction. He battled with homelessness, but his story is a very human story. He died at the age of 43, very tragic. But I did this documentary about Big John Tate, and once I finished this documentary, I watched it through for the first time. I had felt something that I'd never felt in the 15 years that I had done videography, and that was the feeling that I did my absolute best. And Big John's story inspired me to do my best. And I know with this street renaming, his name can inspire others in the community to do their best as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Council Member Testerman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I think that this is a really great dedication and long overdue, honestly, and I wanted to add my name as a co-sponsor.
Okay, that will be recorded. Council Member McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank William again for bringing Big John Tate's life and his legacy back to the forefront of our history. I learned a lot in this journey with him in promoting this, that his career record was 34-3 with 23 wins by knockout. What an amazing person that he was, and in spite of all of the obstacles that he had to overcome, he continued to call Knoxville home when he very well could have called, I think he's from Mississippi? Arkansas. Okay, West Memphis, Arkansas, I think it is. But he called Knoxville home and actually helped put Knoxville on the map. And another little unknown fact was that he was actually presented the keys to the city, which we no longer do that, by former Mayor Randy Tyree. And so now that council is approving this, I want to announce that there will be an unveiling of the honorary street naming for Big John Tate on Monday at 4:30. There's also going to be some other activities, and the documentary will be shown at the Beck Center on that Friday. And I think there's actually going to be dinner and a movie, hot dogs and popcorn. So everyone is invited to please come out, and there will also be an exhibit of Big John Tate's memorabilia that will be hosted there at the Beck, I think, for a couple of weeks. So I would encourage everyone to please come out. But thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
I just wanted to add my name as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas.
Just a footnote, Knoxville's first poet laureate, R.B. Morris, is also a singer and a songwriter, and many years ago, he wrote a song about Big John Tate, and it's out there somewhere, so it might be worth looking up.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker, your light's still, okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11B is a resolution to... 11B is a resolution to add the honorary name Coach John Majors Bridge to the new bridge carrying Topside Road over Alcoa Highway.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Anyone sign up? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11C is a resolution recognizing the need for additional trauma-informed services to address mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness in the city of Knoxville, and to express the intent of council to create an alternative response team task force to develop and propose a plan to pilot the strategic implementation of alternative response in the city of Knoxville.
Mayor, I'd actually like to suggest we have a discussion before we put a motion on the table. I just noticed in Rule 18, Order of Debate, we're able to debate without a motion.
Yeah, we have several people signed up to speak on this item. You know, and council rules, as you all know, is 3 people for and 3 people against. So let me count the number of people who have signed up so you guys know what the full number is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 13 people have signed up to speak on this. So, at the beginning of the meeting, I encouraged members who wanted to speak to select spokespeople so they could conform to council's rules. Have you all selected 3 spokespeople?
All 13.
No? Okay. Well, council, I'll start calling them in the order in which they signed up, and after 3, we'll conclude unless there's a motion otherwise.
I'd love to go ahead and make a motion. Particularly on this issue, I've just found that folks are coming to this issue with different perspectives that I think would be useful for council to hear. Of course, I do not know who has signed up, what perspective they're bringing. But I would move to suspend our rules to allow the speakers to speak, if I have a second.
Councilmember Ryder?
Well, I was just going to second, when we've done that in the past, we just adjusted the time from the 5 to the 3.
Okay, so do you want to make a substitute motion? Or?
Don't we need a second before I can make a substitute motion?
Unless there's not a second, and then you can just make, you can make a new
So
motion.
I'll just make I'm looking at you, Mr. Johnson.
I'll second the first motion, and then you.
I have no idea.
Okay, Ms.
So
Parker made a motion to suspend the rules, Ms. McKenzie seconded it.
I'll make an amended motion that everyone signed up to speaks. The time limit is 3 minutes to amend our rules.
Okay, the motion to amend is setting the limit to 3 minutes instead of 5. Is there a second on the proposed amendment?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment to change it to 3 minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, back to the original motion, amended to 3 minutes to suspend council's rules. And Ms. Parker, did you want to say anything else? Okay, everyone understand what you're voting on? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The rules are suspended, and we'll start with Ms. Amelia James. Ms. James. Yeah. Okay, just, usually we have the timer on the screen behind me, but since that's off at when there's 30 seconds left, I'll just wave my hand.
Sounds good.
And if you could start by stating your name and address for the record.
Amelia James, 1925 Ayler Ave, 37921. So I am a licensed clinical social worker here in Knoxville and a member of Knoxville Heart. So Knoxville Heart has been bringing up this idea of having an alternative response team, which are teams that pair a medic and behavioral health professional to respond to certain 911 calls in Knoxville for the past 3 years. What we've consistently heard from you all is that many of you support alternative response. You understand that the people in our city have a lot of mental health, substance use, and housing and houselessness concerns that are going unaddressed. You understand that police are overburdened when they are required to respond to calls that they don't have the proper support or training to handle. You understand that police presence can escalate someone who is already in crisis. You've also posed a lot of questions to us over the past few years on how alternative response teams would logistically function in Knoxville. And that is why I wholeheartedly support the creation of the Alternative Response Team Task Force. This task force would not exist to check some sort of symbolic box. It would be composed of key stakeholders in our community and give everyone an opportunity to come together to create a tangible proposal on how we can make alternative response a reality in our city. So in addition to my work as a mental health therapist, where I work directly with people in crisis every day, I also provide trauma-informed de-escalation trainings to businesses, social service agencies, and community advocacy groups in Knoxville. One thing I consistently hear at these trainings is, what do we do when we've used all our de-escalation skills and we still need more support, but we don't want to involve police because we know that involving police in these situations is going to increase harm? Right now, I unfortunately don't have an answer for them, but we could have an answer. We could have alternative response teams in Knoxville. Alternative response teams improve outcomes for people in crisis, free up police time to respond to other calls, and save significant money. Change can be scary and overwhelming, but I really hope that we can come together with some bravery and innovation and try something new, because this matters that much and the people in our city matter that much. We have community support for alternative response. If you see everyone here in red shirts, we have community support. We have the support of
20
Chief Noel.
seconds left.
And we need your support now to vote yes on creating this task force so we can take one step closer to making alternative response a reality in Knoxville and making Knoxville a safer city for everyone. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak on this item is Alex Riffwald. You can start by stating your name and address for the record.
Hi, Alex Riffwald, 5522 Dogwood Road. Good evening, my name is Alex Riffwald and I'm part of Knoxville Heart. We've been working on this project for 3 years now. We've met with city council members, community members, neighborhood groups, the press, the mayor's administration, politicians, KPD, Chief Noel, and nonprofits in our city. We've made many connections with aligned organizations in Knoxville. Just look at this crowd. We're blown away by the support Knoxville has shown us. We've consulted with other alternative response teams about their programs, and we're in communication with activist groups across the state who, just like us, are excited about finding new ways to make our community safer. We have put in the work, and I'm really proud of us. Just a gentle reminder, y'all know about alternative response because of Knoxville Heart. We were the ones standing in front of City Council advocating for non-police response when co-response was being rolled out. Alongside our supporters, we're the ones getting this idea out into the community and making sure this conversation continues. We even coined the term alternative response teams. If you don't believe us, just Google it. Our website is the first hit on Google. So every time you use that phrase, don't forget it's because of our commitment and advocacy to this model. There's no alternative response without Knoxville Heart, and we must be included in the creation of this program. Of course, we did not invent this concept. We must acknowledge that we are here because of the incredible work of Black organizers and Black-led groups, both in this city and nationally, who are innovators in community-led safety. Lisa Edwards' death showed many white people in Knoxville for the first time that they are not immune to being harmed by policing. In the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody is free until everybody is free. It feels like at this point in our journey, we all understand the importance of alternative response, we just don't know how to get there. Knoxville Heart supports a task force as a powerful first step towards our city creating an alternative response team. What we've heard from the city is there aren't resources or administrative capacity to build this program, so we're happy to do it for them. But the problem is that it's really difficult to explore potential partnerships in the community when you don't have city support or funding. A task force is a great opportunity to bring community stakeholders, experts, and impacted individuals to the table to explore how we implement this program. One thing we've learned in our research and communication with folks across the country is that public trust is vital to a successful alternative response program. We just talked to an activist last weekend who said Nashville's new model is already having trust issues because of how little transparency there was in the implementation. We cannot repeat that. A task force brings the process out of the shadows and into the sun, where we can continue our work building community support and buy-in for a program that will save lives. It won't be another useless task force. Just look at the dedication in this building right now. Please vote yes on 11C. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak is Ebony Winford. Ebony Winford, if you'd come to the podium. Please start by stating your name and address for the record. You'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Ebony Winford, 8428 Strasburg Court, 37923. I'm speaking as a licensed psychologist as well as a director of research and health equity at a federally qualified health center here in Knoxville. I'm not speaking on behalf of that FQHC, but y'all probably know where I work. Thank you to Representative or Councilmember Tommy Smith for taking the time to meet with us last week. I'm here to speak about someone who literally does this every day. I can't give personally disclosing information, but I will share the most recent encounter I had. Pick a date, any date, because I won't give you the real date because you can identify who I'm talking about. But pick a date. A patient calls in crisis, suicidal ideation, history of self-harming behaviors with the scars on the arm to prove it, hearing voices, delusions, paranoia, and after literally 2 years of trying to convince this person to go in and get help, he says yes. Call 911 and specifically request the co-responder resource that we now have available. I am literally still waiting on them to arrive to take my patient in for care. This is not an insult to the people doing the work because I know our workforce is strained. I work in mental health. I work in community mental health. I work in primary care. The workforce is dwindling. The support is not. I understand that our hospitals are backlogged. I understand that our police officers are being asked to do roles and fulfill functions for which they have very limited training. People like me have training. We know that alternative response models reduce the necessity of that higher level of care, including inpatient admission, inpatient treatment, ER utilization. We know that alternative response models decrease low crime, anything in the city. You can look at some of the Denver Star as well as the Cahoots out of Oregon. They have data that supports that for every time we use an alternative response model, we save $400. Over time, that's a $22 million savings annually. We talking about budget. Let's save some money and lives while we do it. And I'm just gonna be frank because I recognize my time is very limited. In case you didn't notice, I'm a Black woman. I'm just saying. Interactions with law enforcement are scary to me. And as someone who has to convince people who look like me to trust me enough to contact people to help them, and then the help doesn't come. Or when it does come, it leads to harm and exacerbation of the symptoms that are there. We can't keep doing this, y'all. One size does not fit all. There has got to be a better, different way.
Thank you, Dr. Winfrey.
And I volunteers tribute to be on the task force if you all approve it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak is Tina Sparks. Tina Sparks, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
So my name is Tina Sparks. I used to live in Vestal. I now live in North Knoxville, 37917. I am not an expert at anything. I do not have the training that the friends who spoke before me or the friends who will speak after me have. I don't know that a lot of you have that training. So I'm asking, so that's why I'm asking, we need to listen to these folks who have the training. I do know something that I can speak to. Last week at the park meeting, and I don't think I saw a whole lot of you all there last week, but I do know two things I took away from there. Chief Noel is not here, or I would be looking right at him, making eye contact with him. Eye contact is very important when you are talking to people. I taught my kindergartners 29 years to do that. It's just good manners. Thank you. Chief Noel said two things. I wrote it down, I put it in my phone, but now I can't find it, so here it is. Two things. It is not, and I'm pretty sure I'm quoting him, feasible to have two officers in the transport wagon, the vehicle, whatever, taking friends who are in crisis to the detention center. It is not feasible. That's a real important word when you're talking about budgeting. What would make that feasible? What can you do? What can you do to make that a thing? I asked Chief Noel, what if that transport driver has a wreck on the way to the detention center? They only are allowed 2 hours to get that person to the detention center. What happens after that 2 hours is up?
30 seconds left.
The other thing that he said, and he asked in a very, and some of you who were there in the audience, you know this, he asked for donations to the police department for those things that, those machines, help me out, friends, those defibrillators, because they're expensive, and the police department, the city of Knoxville, cannot afford to have those machines.
Ms. Sparks, that concludes your 3 minutes.
I thank you for your time, and I thank you for voting, please, for Resolution 11C. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Charlie Brinkley. Charlie Brinkley, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. Is Mr. Brinkley here? Anyone see Mr. Brinkley? All right, we'll move on to the next person, Kent Minot. Mr. Minot? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Kent Minot. I live at 311 West Glenwood Avenue, Knoxville 37917. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm commenting in support of Alternative Response Team Task Force. It would be tasked with developing a pilot program to implement Alternative Response Team in Knoxville. Alternative Response is actually pro-police. Cahoots, an alternative response program in Eugene, Oregon, responds to 17% of Eugene Police Department's overall calls. Albany Law School found the city saved an average of $400 each time that Cahoots was dispatched instead of police, resulting in estimated annual savings of over $22 million. It's a small city, not bad, huh? The key point here is that the Eugene Police Department likes the program. Reducing the number of instances in which police are called to assist Eugene's unhoused population reduces the number of calls for which their skill set is a poor match. Crisis workers are able to successfully and safely respond to nonviolent calls. Our police department is currently understaffed. Alternative response would allow existing staff to cover more of the calls for which police are properly suited. On October 2020, LA's City Council voted unanimously to develop a Cahoots-like program of unarmed crisis responders. I think our own police chief says that it is possible here. A Stanford University study found that Denver's alternative response program resulted in a 34% drop in low-level crimes. Let's make Knoxville safer and freer from crime and kinder. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Sam Armbruster. Mr. Armbruster, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Sam Armbruster, 2700 Parkview Avenue, 37914. I'm speaking as someone who has lived and worked in Knoxville for the past 6 years. I've worked in community mental health, actually alongside Ebony. I've worked in harm reduction, and during that time, I've built relationships with lots of organizations, and more importantly, lots of people living in our community who have been deeply impacted by houselessness, by the ongoing housing crisis, the ongoing overdose crisis. And one thing that I've realized over that time is that we need more tools in our toolbox. And I think that alternative response is a really essential tool that we could easily add, and that supporting 11C would give the opportunity to figure out what that could look like in our community. One example that is really close to my heart and the work that I have done over the past 6 years is thinking about the ways that the overdose crisis has impacted our community. I know from the work that I do that the vast majority of people who respond to overdose are not police officers. It's people who are in community with other folks who use drugs. They're reversing overdoses of loved ones, of friends, of the people that they really care about. And that is something that's deeply, deeply traumatic, both for the person who is overdosing and for the person who's reversing that overdose. And so many of those people, after the overdose is reversed, choose not to seek emergency services out of fear that the person who reversed the overdose or the person who was overdosing or anyone who's present is going to be arrested for something like paraphernalia charges or a warrant or something like that. And we all know that arrest is not going to make the life of someone who just effectively died and came back better. But what if we
30 seconds.
What if we imagine a world where someone can come and help them process that trauma and help them make sure that they're physically okay and get them the support that they need? I think that's a world I want to live in, and I think we have a really easy tool that we can employ to make that happen for Knoxville. Thanks.
Next person signed up to speak is Elizabeth Johnson. If you could start by stating your name and address for the record, you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Johnson. I live at 1330 Granger Avenue in Knoxville, 37917. And I, like others, am here tonight to express my support for Resolution 11C and to urge you to allocate funding to an alternative response team task force. Alternative response teams safely and effectively redirect vulnerable individuals away from the criminal legal system and towards the social services that they need. Alternative response teams can help prevent escalation, improve outcomes for individuals experiencing mental health crises, contribute to more equitable outcomes for people of color and others that are disproportionately impacted by the criminal legal system, and save cities money. Alternative response teams also reduce the burden, as others have noted, on law enforcement and traditional first responders. As Chief Noel recently noted on a panel at UT College of Law, most of the calls that KPD responds to are not violent crimes and sometimes aren't even crimes at all. So when alternative response teams can, so in some of these situations, alternative response teams can be dispatched instead. So when a parent is struggling with their child and desperate for help, or a daughter is worried about a parent's mental health, or a grandparent is concerned about a grandchild overdosing, or a resident is worried about the safety of a person who's pacing up and down their street and is very obviously experiencing a mental health crisis, a trained behavioral specialist and medical professional, rather than a law enforcement officer, can respond. As you continue to deliberate tonight, I hope that each of you will think about what you would want if you or a family member or a friend or a neighbor were experiencing an acute mental health or substance use crisis. Who would you call? Who would you want to respond? And what would you need in that moment of crisis? I know what I've wanted when I've been in some of the situations that I've just described. And as a researcher who's been studying how contact with the criminal legal system affects children and families for more than 2 decades, I also know what the data say. It's time for us to expand how we think about safety and how we respond to people in crisis in our city.
30 seconds.
Providing funding for an alternative response team task force is an essential first step, and I hope that you vote to approve Resolution 11C. It's a safety issue, it's an equity issue, and it's an economic issue. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Tyler Givens. Mr. Givens?
Hi, my name is Tyler Givens. I live in North Knoxville. City council members and mayor, you've heard the voice of the people here tonight. Look at this diverse crowd of faces and voices that want to do better for our people that are facing crisis in our city. You've heard convincing arguments, expert opinions, lived experience, and the hopes of our community. Please support this resolution. Thank you.
The next person is Brady Watson.
Hello, Brady Watson. I live in North Knoxville. I too, I'm no expert. I don't have a whole lot else to add. I will say I think the folks you need for this task force are in this room. You have a lot of brilliant, really experienced people here. I don't believe the resolution actually names who will be on the task force, but again, I encourage you to look for the folks in this room. You have the data. They know the data. They know how this can happen. I think what I really want to stress is that hopefully when you pass this resolution and create this task force, and once 8 months is up and they have a recommendation to implement a pilot program, you actually do it. We know we need this. People are suffering because we don't have this model. It's worked elsewhere. It can work here. So again, I just encourage you to pass this resolution, and 8 months down the road to actually implement what the team develops. We know it can work. We know we need it. KPD has said we could do it. One of the officers from the Lisa Edwards case said some things I didn't agree with, but he did say that he never should have been there, and I agree with that. And so, again, please vote for this, and please make this happen. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Hassan Atachan. You have up to 3 minutes.
My name is Hassan. I'm a lifelong South Knoxvillian.
As we face unprecedented challenges, increasing overdoses, houselessness, displacement, addiction, mental illness, suicides, death by gun violence, and the confluence of these factors at once, our people deserve policies, programs, and funds that reflect the needs of our communities and that show us that you take our losses, our pain, our trauma, our lives, and death seriously. I, along with several community orgs that together represent thousands of Knoxvillians, ask for the establishment and funding of an alternative response team here in Knoxville as our biggest priority. Funding an alternative response team has for years been a community priority. After Ant was killed by KPD in his high school bathroom with no attempt to de-escalate, to talk to him, to listen to him, to love him, to call his mama, to support him, we asked if we would have to witness another preventable tragedy before our city was willing to act. With the preventable death of Lisa Edwards, we've now experienced the loss so many of us warned our city about. At the hands of KPD, we've yet again lost someone who would still be with us had an alternative response team existed and responded with love and compassion to Miss Lisa's pleas for help before she was taken from her family and community. Not only would funding an alternative response team prevent unnecessary death and minimize at-risk communities' contact with the legal system, but it would also ensure that KPD is not forced to engage with people who just need support and that they acknowledge they are not trained or equipped to support. There is no question that an alternative response team should be established and funded in this year's budget. As we experience a housing crisis, a pandemic, inflation, increasing desperation, addiction, and mental illness, there's a dire need for the compassion and care we have seen shown by alternative response teams that have been established across this country. Houseless people and mentally ill people deserve bodily autonomy, and forcibly displacing and incarcerating the poorest and most neglected members of our community is a tragic injustice that has shocked many of us in Knoxville these past years. Our people, poor people, deserve support, love, and compassionate responses rather than additional trauma and harm. Rather than rounding up and displacing and incarcerating our city's most vulnerable members, those who suffer from severe mental illness, substance abuse disorders, and chronic poverty, we must invest in supporting our houseless community and people suffering from these hardships to make sure that poverty does not continue to be a death sentence or cause for incarceration for people who have long been abandoned by our leaders. 1 out of every 3 houseless men in this country is a veteran. 22 veterans commit suicide every day.
30 seconds.
Most of whom are traumatized and suffering from PTSD and other mental illnesses. My dear friend and South Knoxvillian Josh Evans is among those veterans, lost to suicide in a jail cell after a violent arrest during crisis, a mental health crisis. I think often about how he would still be with us if an alternative response team had responded to his crisis with compassion and care, rather than violently arresting him, jailing him, and ignoring him in his desperation until they found his lifeless body in that jail cell. To our elected leaders, if it were your babies, your elders, your families, your mothers who were preventably killed, lost, humiliated, mocked, as they breathe their final breaths.
That's been 3 minutes.
How far would you go to make sure that policies were put in place to make sure that such loss did not happen again?
Next person signed up to speak is Evora Price. Please.
Hello, my name is Evra Kreis. I live in South Knoxville. I'm here today in support of Resolution 11C for an alternative response team for mental health crises. For over a year and a half in 2021 and 22, I worked at the Mobile Crisis Unit at Helen Ross McNabb as a transport and triage worker. When folks would call the crisis number for mental health care in Knox County and surrounding counties, I was one of the people answering those calls. My coworkers and I would always try to refer people to the least intrusive resources for care possible, but when someone was in danger to themselves or others due to suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, or psychosis, and the person would not get help voluntarily, the only resources we had to offer was a safety check, which meant getting the police involved. In the best case, we could call co-response, but unfortunately the team had very little capacity and of course involved officer response. The response I heard from clients and loved ones was overwhelmingly that they would prefer having a social worker respond to these crises. but oftentimes people would oftentimes people would decline getting the help they need for them or their loved ones that they really needed because of the potential presence of law enforcement. I heard from many folks that they were afraid for their safety and had previous trauma surrounding police encounters. Everyone deserves safety and care in a crisis without fear of being harmed or incarcerated. And I and many others in our community want that for the people of Knoxville. As you can see from the beautiful people behind me wearing red, many people support this. And in the interest of better client and community care in our city, I urge you to pass the Resolution 11C for an alternative response team. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Constance Every. Miss Every. You have up to 3 minutes.
Constance Every, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37914. Hey, Knoxville voters. So India needs to pass this resolution because she has nothing to bring to the table for her 4.5 years as the mayor of this city. Let's also keep it realistic. We have been here before. This is a second attempt to bring heart across the table after you all rejected it 3 years ago, as someone highlighted, for this watered-down version called Responder Program instead. And now that that has literally blown up in your face by the data of success, or more importantly, failure rate, you are ready to now try something truly different. But give Hart the credit for their resiliency and determination. More importantly, the ability to change the key piece, which is an elected employee versus an elected official. Shout out to Amelia Parker for not letting this initiative go and still doing the due diligent work to bring it back to the table a second time around. You all have to pass this resolution because we have already highlighted before, Anthony Thompson Jr. needed this program. Lisa Edwards needed this program. Sierra McCullough needed this program. There are so many numerous others. And so we cannot continue to sit back and funnel money into our police department that we have spent more time giving militarization and surplus equipment to versus actually addressing the cultural issues within the department itself. So again, voters, if they do not give you what you need tonight, then you leverage the vote and vote India and the rest of the administration up out of here. You have the power, you have the say-so, exercise your authority, exercise your leverage, and more importantly, vote India up out of here because she continues to show who she truly is. I cannot say it enough. If you are not voting for Constance Every, then you are not serious about change. If you are not voting for Constance Every, then you're not serious about heart. If you're not voting for Constance Every, then you're not serious about the KPD Police Department and the necessary changes that must come through once for all. Again, Knoxville, we need this program. And if they don't give it to you, then you use your ultimate power as a voter and as a taxpayer, and you put these people out of office once and for all. I yield my time.
Council members, that concludes the people who signed up to speak to item 11C. Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Shipe, I have you signed up as for public forum. Okay, council, okay.
We already have.
Council members, unless there's any objection, Ms. Shipe says she meant to sign up for this item, not public forum, correct? Okay, come on down.
Good evening, Vivian Shipe, 3615 MLK, Knoxville 37914. The phone rings. In that unseen space between the parent and the child, the sounds of a scuffle ensue. The child is phasing. They're having a psychotic moment and they're scared. Scared because somewhere in their confusion is the warning that those uniforms mean something is wrong. What's going on? What has happened? Why are they surrounding me? They don't know how to react. They don't know what to do. Those voices of authority seem very loud. Miles away, over the airways, the mother can hear the conversation, the orders, the scuffle, the demands to get on the ground. In the midst of all this, in the midst of the handcuffing, the placing in the police car, the parent hears the child say, "I'm not a bad person, officer. I'm not a bad person." Then the phone goes silent. How different this scene could have been. What if the person in that moment of crisis had first been met by two people in a van or an SUV, in polo shirts and jeans, people trained to talk down a person suffering from the disease of mental illness and able to get them to a point where they can be taken to the Behavioral Health Urgent Care Center for evaluation and stabilization, with the choice of either hospitalization or housing waiting to take them to a restorative place. Not to MedPod 4 at a jail whose purpose was never meant to care for the mentally ill. Housing, that is the other missing piece. You see, we've talked about it for far too long. We must put dollars, real dollars, behind housing that provides safe spaces with wraparound services. We must deal with mental illness just like we do other diseases, for it truly is just a disease of the brain. What is being asked for tonight is doable. It is critical. It is past time. It is needed right now. There is a saying, where your money is, that's where your heart is. Where does the heart of the people of Knoxville lie? As you look around this room and read the emails that you have received, you can see it lies with the most vulnerable. It lies with the least of us. I would remind you of the words of the book you put your hand on when you were sworn into office. Matthew 25:40. The king will answer and say to them, "To the extent that you did it for one of these brothers of mine, you did it for me." Tonight, approve the resolution for an alternative task force. Place it in the budget and let it become a recurring part of our yearly budget. Tonight, do it for the most vulnerable of us.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for the community who showed up tonight, who've been working hard on this issue, who signed up for public forum. We are here tonight discussing this issue because of all the work that you have done. So I just wanted to say thank you quickly. To the mayor and my colleagues, I wanted to begin today's discussion a little bit different than we had in the past, because I know members of council have been having conversations with members of the community about this topic, and I'm quite excited about where we are in that conversation. I believe there's a lot of support for this resolution, but I also believe there may be need for more time for council members to grow in their understanding of what exactly is being proposed. So I wanted to hear from council members tonight. I can start off briefly by introducing the topic and stating my reasoning for wanting to bring the resolution. I think many of y'all are aware that members of the community held a People's State of the City address recently this month to highlight some issues that they felt needed more attention from city government, more attention in our budget. And some of those issues are priorities that city council cannot move on. You know, we are not able to decouple the Title VI office and the Community Safety Office. We do not have power over those things. But the issue of alternative response is something that we could have some impact on. And through conversations with the community, it was only 20 days ago, May 10th, that the community met to formalize a proposal to move alternative response forward. And initially, the proposal was to fund and to present a resolution that fully funded an alternative response team, not just the task force, but the full team. And after conversations, it was clear that the council is not ready at this point to commit to the team to that level. But there may be a possibility for council to approve this resolution and commit to forming a task force. So if you all would be open to it, I would love to hear where everyone is at with this resolution and your suggestion of whether you're ready to vote tonight or if you need more time. That's what I propose.
Councilmember Singh?
I'll go. I think it's time for this, guys. We've been talking about it for a really long time. The volunteers that have been involved in this for 3 years, they put a lot of time and energy. They're not getting paid. They're doing this for the community. We've had a lot of instances where an alternative response team would have been appropriate. I agree with one of the speakers. This is pro-police. We ask our police to do a ridiculous amount of social work. That is not their job. I do not think we need to workshop on this anymore. I do not think we need to wait until the county and the health department and everybody else gets involved. I think this is our responsibility. This is something that all over the country is happening. It's not brand new. And I'm surprised that we have any resistance. I understand that there is not a group who has, like McNabb Center stood up to do the co-response model, and we don't have that right now for an alternative response. But we need to create that, right? We created Turn Up Knox when we were missing, when there was a gap that needed to be filled. I think the $50,000 is a very small amount to start moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brito?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very supportive of considering this addition of alternative response to further complement our efforts that we've been doing about responding in instances where, a police response and police presence may not be necessary. So I'm very supportive of all the work that's going on. For those in the room, I know council knows this, but 2 years ago at our council retreat, council asked to have a joint mental health care workshop with our county and state partners, and we did that. And so about a year ago, we had that, and since then, I've continued that discussion and actually been continuing discussing alternative response teams with the providers that we have in the community. I've also asked for a review of gaps in services that an alternative response team could fill. To the question of this resolution today, I don't support the language that's written because, I'm not sure that $50,000 is the right number. And in my experience, knowing how we've had some successful task force in the past, they can sometimes get things done. The most recent example is the sign ordinance task force. They met for 3 years before they brought somebody to council. And I agree with what everyone said. This is so important. It's not something that needs to just go to a committee. It's something that we need to work on. And so that's why I don't support the task force at this time. I do have some questions, though. Deputy to the Mayor Gill, has city staff researched this model?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Erin Gill, Deputy to the Mayor and Chief Policy Officer. Yes, we really, in response to many of the public comments that some of you made when we were on Zoom back in 2020, our team, and Ms. Middlebrook was part of this as well, began to look at alternative response, and we looked at case studies, we looked at third-party research, we spoke with local providers, potential partners, and we also had conference calls with some of the cities that are successfully implementing these programs. So we did, if you recall, present some of those findings in a workshop in June of 2021. And really as a result of some of that dialogue, contracted with McNabb to provide a workshop for sequential intercept mapping that many partners in our community participated in, and alternative response was considered as part of that sequential intercept mapping process.
Okay. And in your review of alternative response teams, has this approach shown promise in other communities?
Yes, it has, and I would say that, you know, as folks have articulated both in meetings and you've heard our team say in conversations about this, we do think that they have shown progress, or excuse me, promise, and could, in theory, work in Knoxville. We see that as a potential to explore.
Okay. Now, the city doesn't have a health department, and we don't have specific expertise in mental health. Is this something that could work in Knoxville if we found a local partner who's willing to operate it?
We think that local partner would be absolutely critical.
And in looking at these kinds of programs that you've looked at, what are the more successful ones that you've seen?
So I'll hit on some of the themes that we've seen that make them successful. The first is really a foundation of cross-jurisdictional partnership. So it's not just a city acting unilaterally, but having strong partnership, including funding from multiple sources. That includes county, state, federal, kind of all the way up the chain, as well as philanthropic. We've also seen that they're complex, so they require really extensive coordination to manage those highly complex logistical systems to make something like this successful. And one point is that they also require significant new funding, so it's not necessarily realistic that they are offset by savings elsewhere.
Okay. And so is there a benefit to having a cross-jurisdictional approach where you've got the city, the county, and the state all at once working on something like this?
I think particularly because it is so predicated on mental health as the key the key focus of the service, then yes, it would absolutely in Knoxville require that type of cross-jurisdictional partnership to be successful.
Okay. And what I would pose to council as well, and I have brought this up with our planning commission chair, is maybe we should reconvene the joint mental health care workshop, and we can discuss those gaps and potentially this as well. So I just wanted to put that out there that we could do that today. We could think about that going forward. And then Mayor, just my last question, this is asking for $50,000. Would you support and bring a budget amendment if a partner could be found that could stand up this type of a program and funding from other partners was located?
Yes, absolutely. I think that'd be a really positive step forward, but I think those other partners are essential.
Thank you.
Councilmember Testerman?
Thank you. I just have a question. I don't know who is equipped to answer this, Councilmember Parker or someone else, but I'm just curious, after having looked at different models across the country, and we have heard about it for a long time, I'm just curious what analysis has been done that, looking at Knoxville, I don't know if call volume, those types of things have been considered, but how much this startup would cost? How many individuals would you anticipate would also need to be hired to form an effective alternative response team? For starters, that's my first question.
Yes, I would say that initial work has been conducted in multiple spaces to different degrees. As far as the Knoxville Heart Group, they have a proposal for an initial startup that would require the purchase of a new vehicle, hiring 3 staff people to start up the program. I think the budget's close to $400,000, around $350,000 would be startup cost for a pilot program.
Okay. I just go back to our current co-responder model, and we've got, 4 teams, I believe, that, has started. And, I know that that's nowhere close to it being fully functional. It would probably take 18 to 24 individuals to be able to fully staff all shifts throughout the day. And the cost associated with that would be pretty costly. And then my concern in this model, the fact that nurses are a part of this equation, knowing how healthcare is struggling with nurses and are depending on traveling nurses to be able to staff our hospitals and our emergency rooms. Our ambulance, our responders are part of this equation. And to be very honest, I mean, our ambulance system right now is incredibly broken. I mean, they're 4-hour response times, 7-hour response times, 8-hour response times. So, you know, we have so many broken pieces already that this program would be dependent on. I just am you know, would even be concerned on how that staffing would even be possible at this point, not to mention the cost that would need to be allocated.
Can I make one clarification?
Okay, yeah, or please be quiet in the audience. This is a discussion among
Yeah.
council members. Councilmember Tessman, did you have anything else to add?
I'll let Councilmember Parker respond.
Ms. Parker?
I just wanted to offer one clarification. I've actually met with multiple EMTs who are in support of this program. I almost said super support, but I'm trying to be professional. In support of this program. And part of the reason is because of the state of our ambulatory care and emergency room capacity. They see this as something that would relieve the workload that they're currently experiencing as emergency medical staff. And I know that they would love to be a part of this process, a part of the task force, a part of developing that solution. But I just wanted to clarify that those are pieces that hopefully this program would relieve some of the work rather than needing them to be a part of the equation in that sense.
Thank you. Councilmember McKenzie and then Ryder.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to first say that I am not opposed whatsoever to alternative response teams. But if we're going to do it, we have got to take a lot of things into consideration. One, for example, when we talk about ERs and how understaffed they are and overpopulated. When you walk in UT hospital emergency room, most nights it looks like a third world country. Some nights in there are people who are literally sitting in the lobby who need to be back being cared for, and they're out there with IVs and all types of things. That's not a good level of care, if you will. But when we talk about alternative response teams, when we have someone who is suicidal or homicidal ideation, someone who is high on drugs, 9 times out of 10 before a family is going to call anybody, they've been experiencing this for a very long time. And a lot of times it is to the point where they can no longer handle it. There's aggressiveness, they are afraid, there is some violence toward family members. And so I'll go back to the joint workshop that we had, if any of you guys watched that or you were here for that. And to be honest with you, there is no way that we are going to be successful because we all know, and those of you who are sitting in the audience, the treatment options are very limited. There are waiting lists that are ridiculous for people to get help. So even when we go out on a call, even when you go out on a call, where are you going to put the person? The most disgusting thing that I heard in that joint workshop, and it was a true fact, from the Knox County Jail system, it was Randy Nichols who said, Knox County Jails is the mental health facility for people in the city and the county. And that's horrendous because that is not where they belong. That is not where they belong. But there are no treatment options that are available for some people who are in those levels of crisis once they are medically stabilized. And that's where they end up, if they're medically stable. That is not the place for them. So a joint venture needs to look like city, county, and the state. It has to be sustainable.
Hey, please be quiet. We can't hear Ms. McKenzie.
Again, for it to be sustainable, It has to be a joint venture on all levels of government bodies. We need the state stepping up to be able to invest more dollars into putting state-level mental health and substance abuse facilities back into our city. Again, I'm speaking. So at this point, when we're talking about a task force, when we're talking about something of this nature, all of those entities have to be at the table. There is no way around it. All of these entities have to be at the table. That's Helen Ross McNabb, that's Cherokee, that's everybody. So again, and I'm speaking. If you want to have a conversation after the meeting, I'll be happy to speak with you. But again, in order for us to be able to deliver the type of services to meet the needs of the people who are living in our city and our county, this is so much bigger than just the city. And if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. And so that's my position on it. Not opposed to it, but we are going to have everybody at the table. And again, when I say joint venture, we cannot just continue to look to the city. The city cannot do it alone. We don't have the capacity as it relates to the mental health facilities, the substance abuse facilities. There's so much dual diagnosis that's going on as it relates to some of these issues that we're talking about. And so I appreciate the work that HEART has been doing, but there is so much more support that it will be needed outside of the city to make this successful.
Thank you, Councilmember McKenzie. Councilmember Ryder. Members of the audience, please do not interrupt City Council. This is their time to have a discussion. Thank you. Councilmember Ryder.
Yeah, so Councilwoman Parker specifically asked for this time for us to have a discussion, so I appreciate that. When I spoke with a member from HEART, my reservation was about the $500,000 that was in the resolution. The number that actually made it to the agenda is a different number. So my questions to Ms. Riffwald, I believe, were what is the $500,000? Like, what is the budget? There was no budget to that, and so that was the hesitation. I don't think that any of us are opposed to have an alternative response. I think the struggle is that we started, and many of you have been in it for the long haul, we started with the co-responder model because the social workers that were willing to step up in the staffing program said that their staff didn't want to go out without backup in the instance when things might go a different direction. And the struggle that we have right now is not that that model is failing. It's not someone said not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Some cities have both models. Is that those positions are vacant, and Helen Ross McNabb has many vacant positions as well. I just think it's important to say that many of us in the room, though we think we don't agree with each other, we do. We're in a state that has not taken the Medicaid expansion, and we have a collapsing healthcare system, and cities like Knoxville and Nashville and Memphis and Chattanooga that actually still have hospitals, unlike the many places that don't have hospitals or ERs, we're collapsing because we're bearing the brunt of all the places that don't. And we have a lot of caregivers that don't want to be in this state anymore. Let's be honest. Why would they? People have made it unpalatable to be here if you're a caregiver. And so that's cascading and making things that weren't great worse. So I'm not opposed to having a task force. I have a question for Ms. Gill. So we're doing the joint state, county, city funded, I'm not sure what we're calling it, in the old.
Empath?
Empath? What does that stand for?
At St. Mary's is what you're talking about?
Yeah, what are you calling it, empath?
Empath, does that stand for?
Okay, and so what exactly are we going to be doing there? And is that expansion and some of that funding and/or something that could be added upon to address this?
Councilman Ryder, I'll give the overview from my understanding and ask my deputies to expand if for anything I may leave out. But basically, this is a good example of how the city can contribute to mental health. We own a building at the corner of St. Mary's that used to be the Women's Outpatient Surgical Center. Is that right? Or some outpatient surgery. and it's vacant. So we own it. We have a building. We have needs in the community. So we went to the state. We met with the governor. We went with Mayor Jacobs. We explained the need, that we need more mental health inpatient care and short-term care. And what we could offer is a building and money to commit to renovate that building for the new need. And the county said they would agree to help us with the renovation costs. So there's money in real estate from the city. And what the state agreed to do, along with the hospitals and McNabb, is for the hospitals to staff an urgent care clinic in one part of the building, and then another part of the building is going to be, I think, 17 short-term beds for people in a mental health crisis, up to 3 days. So there'd be a physical health clinic in one portion of the building for the general public, for strep throat, sprained ankles, or to get medically cleared to get admitted to the behavioral health unit. So basically, it's short-term beds, I think 17, and that it will be funded, and this is important for council, mental health care is expensive, and staffing it is expensive. McNabb will staff it, and it'll be funded in part through hospitals and TennCare, I believe, the staffing. Mr. Brace, can you elaborate on things I might have left out?
No, I think what's important about that is that was an initiative pushed by the three big healthcare systems, University of Tennessee, Tennova, and Covenant, specifically Fort Sanders, which sees significant amounts of indigent care. And so we came to the table to support this initiative through the healthcare systems and McNabb, and again, provided the building, some initial capital along with the county, and then the funding will come primarily from the state, and some, I believe, indigent care from Knox County. But again, that took 3 years of work, and again, we were at the table to help with that, but the leaders were the healthcare systems and McNabb.
My time is up.
Okay.
Come back.
Council Member Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. There have been a lot of concerns and issues raised, legitimate and good ones, and we've talked about what resources we don't have. I think these are all the things that the task force would be working on as a council. As a council, that is, most of us, that is not our skill set. And I don't think we go into other programs to this extent to review them. The objection or the hesitation some folks have on the task force, we created the African American Equity Restoration Task Force, and I believe that was funded $150,000. And I believe that it was necessary, and it's doing good work. But this is an example we've used before, and it's moving forward. And yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to share a quick story about my trip to Denver. I was able to meet with Denver STAR, their alternative response program. And, you're in Denver, they've got this great public transit, you're looking around, and they have more resources than Knoxville does. So top of mind for me was, I asked them, if you did not have the services in your city that you currently have, and you didn't have as many options to take someone to a service provider, if you didn't have expanded Medicaid, would this program still be beneficial? Would you still recommend a city like Knoxville implement a program like Alternative Response? And they emphatically said yes. And they gave specific reasons why and examples. And a lot of the times it's because they can treat someone, stabilize someone right there where they meet them. They don't have to take them somewhere. They don't have to use the emergency rooms. It actually frees up space in our emergency rooms because there's this alternative option. But they emphatically said yes because of the experiences that they've been having since their program was started. Another set of phone calls that they get that they're able to respond to are folks, experiencing a low level of mental health crisis where they're living in a more isolated situation, they just don't have anyone to turn to, they would call Denver Star, who could come and, talk to them through whatever, small crisis. It doesn't have to be a major crisis. It can even be a small mental health crisis that Denver Star shows up for. And they were able to respond in this way, particularly during the pandemic when folks were in isolation. We still have folks who are living somewhat in isolation if they have fragile, a medical situation. They're still susceptible to COVID and other diseases out there. So I still see that as a need in that situation, as well as these situations where they're able to treat folks in the field. The other thing I wanted to say is I agree that this has to include as many partners as possible and all levels of government as possible. I would love the federal government to be a part of this task force. But to get the state involved, it's not going to be Knoxville Heart that pulls them in. It's not going to be Councilmember Parker who pulls them in. We really need the support of the administration to pull the state into these conversations. And so, the purpose of the task force is just an initial step for us to say, the city of Knoxville is interested, the city of Knoxville sees this as a need. We do not believe we can do this alone. We believe that we will need partners in different levels of government. We will need partners in nonprofits, in the private sector. But the task force provides the space for us to pull people into this conversation and see what results from it. I also hear concerns about the 8-month timeline and how long other task forces have taken to produce a proposal. I do think that we can extend that. I think it's helpful to set an expectation. This was set by the community of the timeline that they wanted to work within to show what their level of commitment was, what future, members of the task force, what level of commitment we need from them so that we can really engage in a high level of work for several months to bring back a proposal. But if more time is needed, that can come back before council to consider an extension, additional funding, but hopefully work could be accomplished and this could move us forward in the amount of time described in this resolution.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryder.
Yeah, so my question a while ago to the administration wasn't precisely exactly what empath was. It was, so the question here is who houses the alternative response team? And that's the question that Hart has been asking. And the response is collectively, KPD is not where it belongs, or an alternative response. So my question is the alternative response team, is that something that can be housed with the empath offered and managed through Helen Ross McNabb? That is my question.
I would just say that McNabb has been part of these discussions for several years, and they say they want to focus on co-responder and the many other things they're doing on mental health, and they are not ready to embark on an alternative response. So, and they are the ones that, there was one of the speakers who talked about, the mobile crisis service. They are our mobile crisis service through the mental health department. We have a state of Tennessee mental health department, and here's, it says that there's a 24/7, 365 response team for those who are experiencing a mental health emergency. And then they say the services are for children and youth, adults, across the state. The problem is, and we all know this, is that it's not enough. And they need to, do a better job providing those services in person, not just on the phone and not just during business hours and so forth. So, again, I think that this is really important. I think the city can play a role, but just like Empath, which we started, Empath and the BHUC and street outreach workers, all these things that the council has pushed for and supported that we did, we moved forward on those just as a council because we heard input from the community. They didn't need a task force. And so this is the state responsibility. And I agree with Councilmember McKenzie and others who've said that, we should definitely play a role in this, but it can't be something that we are starting like our own city mental health department. I think that that's outside our purview, it's outside our budget, it's outside our area of expertise.
To fund the baseball stadium.
Council members Singh.
Thank you again. I don't think anyone's talking about funding an entire mental health department right now. And Lauren, I think you asked some really good questions. Once again, I think those are things that the task force needs to look at. I don't have much hope that the state of Tennessee is going to come out here, or the sheriff's department. They're too busy fighting with kids, with 15-year-old girls. But I do not think that they are going to be. If we don't do this, what are we going to do, right? I'm still very sore about 2 weeks ago when the recovery community lost out on $5.5 million. And then now today, we're talking about not helping other people who are in crisis. And I'm just really disappointed that we're not moving forward somehow. I do not want to sit here and go, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's wait for other people to come in and do this. And then 3 years later, we're having the same conversation. So what are we going to do if we don't do this? What's our next move?
Councilmember Parker.
I agree with Councilmember Singh, and am worried that we're struggling to see the benefit of something that many of us feel is a reasonable next step in this conversation. I do think that the task force is the space for us to explore these questions, and council meetings have not been adequate. Workshops have not really been adequate. Oftentimes, workshops are an opportunity for information to be shared with us, but we don't have as much opportunity to have discussions like we're having right now and like a task force would engage in. We've definitely heard from Helen Ross McNabb that they are interested in the co-responder model, not necessarily housing an alternative response program. And so I think that is another reason why the task force is needed, so that these mental health care professionals from other agencies have an opportunity to help develop a plan that expands what our capacity is as a city beyond what Helen Ross McNabb is able to provide. Completely understandable if they want to, limit their services. Absolutely, completely understandable. But what is not okay for me is that we say this is the state's responsibility and we continue to send police to situations.
That's right.
We are obviously taking on the responsibility if we are sending police. We're not going to step back and say, hey, state, send some police to that issue. We're the city. We don't deal with mental health. We're not going to let that happen. We have a duty to our citizens to ensure public health and safety in our city. And so whether the state provides the funding, whether the state provides leadership on this issue or not, the problems fall back to us. And so we have to have a solution. And to do nothing means that we're just going to do the same thing, which our community is telling us is causing harm. I really hope that, we're able to find a solution that we're able to move forward. And if that means, a few edits to the resolution, please, let us know, because this is our space to have some debate and negotiation and see if we can come up with a solution.
Councilmember Testerman?
Thank you. So I'm just curious if, let's say, the task force is formed. Help me understand what that looks like, the structure of it. You know, how many members are there? Who's going to oversee scheduling meetings? You know, noticing.
Hey, please do not interrupt
up,
the discussion
Constance.
of council, or you'll be asked to leave. Hey, order. If you cannot keep silent during council's discussion, you'll be asked to leave. Does everyone understand? If you cannot keep silent and let council conduct their business without interruption, you will be asked to leave. Councilmember Testerman.
So I'm asking a legit question. If you've got a task force that's formed, whether it's a committee, a board, task force, whatever, it's got to have structure. So I'm just curious what's been thought out where that's concerned. Again, how many members, scheduling, keeping minutes, sunshine notices, all of those things. You know, I just go back to, you know, a business plan of some kind of the task force, but also the model for an alternative response team, you know, who oversees it. We've talked a whole lot about Helen Ross tonight, and nobody's here representing them to be a part of this conversation. So these are all just questions that I have. It's like starting any operation, any business, to better understand the confines of what that looks like.
No, happy to answer. The resolution is written in a way where the task force would be formed 2 months from now, if passed today. And so that would give us 2 months to finalize all of those details. I would, you know, commit to engaging in the process similar to what we've seen over the last few days, where, you know, leaders in our community who are leading on this issue are in touch with council members to gauge your input, solicit your input on what that makeup of the task force should look like and what you would support, because the makeup of the task force would come right back before City Council for approval. I have meetings with the administration to get the administration's input on members for that task force, but that would be work to be conducted after this resolution passes over the next 2 months before it comes back to City Council.
Thank you for that. I just, you know, again, going into something of this magnitude and having some of those things already thought out and fleshed out as to what it looks like, just even a rough draft, if you will. I mean, I think that's, you know, the idea, but I guess I'm just looking for more details on what's been thought through.
Well, and just quickly, I guess the rough draft would be the description in our packet, you know, that states the type of members that we envision would be a part of the task force, what demographic they're representing. Where is that? I have it somewhere. And that's on page 594. That describes a bit of that demographic that we would expect to be represented on the task force. So that's a little bit.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I've tried to, spend a lot of time on the phone with folks from HART, people at McNabb, and members of the administration. So I just want to reflect a little bit about what I've heard. I want to first of all thank HART for bringing this model to me years ago, and you all brought educated, rational, programmatic ideas for this program. And I think what I've witnessed is over the course of a couple of years, we've moved from little uncertainty to general consensus that this program needs to happen. I've also heard that funding's not an issue in terms of next steps. So while it may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to stand up, there's not a funding gap for researching or meeting with Hart, McNabb, and the administration. So in my opinion, council is not needed to take the next step. We don't need to be involved and necessarily read ourselves into the play. We have, McNabb has been doing this for 2 years. They've learned a lot. Hart has not stopped researching what they've found. What I've also heard is somewhere in there, there's a people problem where people are either being welcomed to the table or aren't talking to one another or being heard or listening well. So somewhere in there, there's a break in communication between what's next, because we've spent a lot of energy tonight dancing around the fact that we all agree that everybody, including McNabb, is open to a supplemental model that exists in addition to the co-responder model. I think there's some disagreement about whether the co-responder model needs to continue or whether this needs to be, but there is agreement on it being an additional program. And I want to thank people who spoke to me and educated me about it doesn't have to be either or. So there's broad consensus here that we need another program to fill a gap. And I think the administration, along with McNabb, who has 2 years worth of data about what they've seen, good, bad, and different, and they have a fresh perspective from other models across the nation where this is working. So council getting involved and chairing committees and having folks is not the problem. The problem is a next step where people, in addition to McNabb and the administration, are welcomed into what that could look like. And the biggest obvious practical thing is there's not anybody to deliver this. So whether it's this committee, whether it's the administration, whether it's the past 2 years, everybody can do enough research. There's enough smart people in this room to do research of what this program could look like. Nobody's willing to do it yet. So I don't want to skip past that. And us banging around for 6 months or 2 months or a year with committees and different groups is actually not a required thing to take this ball forward. We know what the ingredients are. There are people that are out there that are willing to voice into what the scope of the service looks like. The administration, as far as I've discussed, there's not a gap in funding to take the next step. Yes, we need more parties at the table, but it doesn't have to be limited to the city or the state or any individual agency. So I'm not convinced, and I've discussed this at length with the members of Hart and the administration, I'm not convinced that a task force by council is what's required. I think it makes it feel like there's a next step, but as long as this administration, which I think I've heard, is committed to continue to pursue the scope of this program, there's a willing agency that's able to take this on. I think there's a will there. So in my opinion, you can amend this resolution, you can withdraw it, you can replace it, whatever it takes. I don't think I'm going to bring anything, not that I don't want to serve on this, and not that I don't spend a lot of energy with folks who are unhoused and need help. I just don't think that city council is the answer or the expert to take this ball forward. Between McNabb, the administration, and Hart, all the experts are there. And my understanding is the funding's there to take this ball forward. So I'm kind of indifferent on whether this thing works or that thing, but picking a number and forming a committee by council just seems like it's an act of genuine frustration. And fair enough, because it's been a couple years of waiting for the next step. With that said, this is a new model that we're experiencing right now. We should hear from McNabb what they're learning. They don't necessarily want to do this program, but they're willing to let someone else. And I think that's a big deal from where we started 2 years ago.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Thomas?
Yes. All the points that were made at the podium were well taken, and we all want to get to the same place. It's just simply a question, not simply, because it's complicated, about how to get there. Some of the points that Councilman Smith made about how to approach this problem, I think were...
Councilman Thomas, can you pull your mic closer?
I can.
Thanks.
Are quite good. And One of the concerns I have is how we move forward in a unified way. And what I have been hearing, also just from discussions with the community and with staff and McNabb, there seems to be not a unity between HART and the people that are working in conjunction with the city and McNabb. Somebody's not hearing each other, somebody's not meeting together. I don't know what it is. And to paraphrase, or to use Councilman Smith's word, I think we may have a little bit of people problem there. And we don't need to get at cross purposes. And that's one reason why I have reservations. I haven't excluded it, but I have reservations about setting up an independent group when we already have a group that's done an extensive amount of work through McNabb and have partially put in a program. So I guess I will just leave it with a question, regardless of whether we do two separate groups or unify the groups, how do we move forward with communication and unity so that we're not operating under cross purposes and that we can really have all the players in the room dealing in a real way about who's doing what and what gaps need to be addressed.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Ryder, I don't know if you or Ms. McKenzie, go ahead. What? Councilmember Ryder? And then Councilmember McKenzie, and then we'll go back.
Sure. I just wanted to respond to, I think Councilman Smith and Councilman Thomas just made some valid points, and I think that loops back to something Councilwoman Singh said a few moments ago. A couple other things that have been brought up here tonight that have got started were like the BHUC is one of those. That was before we all got on council. I recall very much when that got put in place. The issue, those were not done with a task force. So asking questions about the task force and how it's going to work is a legitimate question, because I think the reason, as Councilman Thomas just pointed out, the ask for the task force is really a response to the frustration. I've sat down in meetings with people from HART because nobody's saying, no, an alternative response team is not the way to go. It's just no one wants to do it. Who's supposed to figure out who's going to do it? We feel that they're asking us to figure out who's going to do it. You know what? I just got to say to you guys, I'm not saying I'm opposed, so please stop assuming that I'm against. Councilwoman Parker asked us to discuss with her. Because of Sunshine, we don't get to go have meetings with her on Zoom. So we're having the discussion because that's what she asked for, and I think that's fair. So thanks for letting us have that discussion so we can legally do it. The issue that I'm trying to get at is that a task force didn't happen in those instances because there was buy-in from the administration. And the reason, thank you, Councilwoman Parker, for agreeing with me. Sure. That's the elephant in the room we're talking about, okay? And the buy-in, I'm not trying to throw people under the bus, is a capacity issue. We asked Helen Ross McNabb to do the BHUC. We asked Helen Ross McNabb to do Empath. We asked Helen Ross McNabb to do co-responder. We asked them to do this. We asked them to do that. They're understaffed. You want to be a social worker, a clinical social worker, jobs are in abundance. Heck, if you want to be a teacher, you want to be a policeman, there's no workforce for anything apparently anymore. So we've asked them to do everything, so we got to figure out who else to ask, and that's what HART's been going at. So all I'm just trying to say is, I don't know that the task force is going to force the buy-in. That's all. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm just being frank and blunt. And I think that's what I heard Councilman Smith say, and Councilman Thomas, is that, are we going to force the hand of buy-in from somewhere and somehow? So I just don't want to set it up for failure, that's all. I'm not saying not vote for it because I don't want to set it up for failure. I'm just being frank and saying out loud what you didn't say. Is that fair enough? No? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, I just don't see the process as a means to force an outcome. I really don't want to set it up that way.
Okay.
But I think, and also, from council members and the administration, I've heard a lot of positivity, but also a lot of questions. And so if there is a lot of positivity and a lot of questions, my hope would be that the task force provides a space to help create some clarity. Whereas we've spent another hour again trying to get some clarity, and we're just not going to get clarity in this space. There's too many questions to answer, too many reports to make sure we've all read and we're all on the same page on. So that's really why I'm pushing for the task force, not because I think it will force an outcome, but because I think it will create space. It will allow those of us on council who want to help take the lead on this to get involved, help take the lead, and recognize that there is limited capacity in the administration, recognize that there are a lot of asks being made right now of our city that, coming out of the pandemic, we have stood up new programs that need attention and support. But this is a space where council can help move the ball forward, just like we have done through workshop spaces and other things, because ultimately, this is going to have to come back before us for approval, to form it, to fund it. So I think it makes sense for us to form a task force around this issue.
Councilmember McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Ms. Riffwald if you could come back to the podium. I have a couple of questions, please. Okay, thank you. And my apologies that I did not get an opportunity to meet with you guys before this came on to, before council. But just reviewing HEART and the website, it looks like HEART has been doing some research these last 2 to 3 years around this topic and have been advocating.
Absolutely.
Have you all had the opportunity to sit down with the chief, with the people who are currently involved with the co-responder team that's set up in KPD, or with Helen Ross McNabb, some of the programs that are already out there that we're hearing folks talk about, like BHUG? Have you all had that opportunity to sit down with them and gather their data and just talk a little bit about some of the challenges that they're experiencing?
We've had incredible opportunity to sit down with Chief Noel, who was incredibly supportive of our proposal. We tried to give him our full spiel, and he was like, "Stop, I'm on board," just immediately. So I encourage each of you to reach out to Chief Noel and ask him about how he feels about this program. We have not reached out to Helen Ross McNabb, honestly, about the co-response program, because our values do not align with the co-response program. So while we're open, and I think the task force would be a great time to do that, just our values do not align with police response at this time for mental health crises. So no, we have not sat down with them.
And what about Cherokee? Have you guys had any conversations with Cherokee? I know that
We've sent a lot of emails to a lot of different folks about meeting with us, and it's often we don't get responses because we are just a small volunteer group. We don't have funding. We don't have government backing or support. So it's kind of like a shot in the dark when we reach out. So that's what I feel the task force really accomplishes, is it allows these people that are very busy with their own missions to come and, get on this task force and accomplish this.
Right. And so knowing that the ultimate goal is to establish an alternative response team that will be able to full service meet the needs, to identify all of the resources that are available, because again, if you go out on a call and this person needs to be placed somewhere and there's nowhere to place them, this is why I talk about the joint venture and that people are coming to the table. By no means am I saying we're going to call the state and ask them to respond to a call or anything like that, but do we need the state to be saying, yes, they're willing to put money into this city and to help expand existing services, or as the mayor talked about, having some beds somewhere and being able to expand on those beds. We know, again, that we have limited resources. We have more people who need help than we have resources. And again, this is why, unfortunately, a lot of people land in Knox County Jail, which is where they do not belong, of all places. And so with that said, does HEART already have a proposal as it relates to, hey, this is what we would, if you had it today, if you could turn in a proposal today, you all have it built out as to you know, everything that you would need. I saw that you do have, you've done some research on days of the week, the hours from other cities that have these types of co-responder teams where they feel are those hours where you would need staffing. And so how many teams would you all be looking at, just based on the numbers that you've seen and you've gathered locally?
Sure. Just to address the first part, you'd mentioned, you know, the big question that I hear from a lot of city council members, which I think is very legitimate, is where do these people go when we go to the calls? And I think what's missing on that question is just the concept of de-escalation. For a lot of these folks, they're not willing to go to services. Maybe they've had a really bad experience with getting mental health services, but there is a way to de-escalate them and prevent harm from a police officer showing up on the scene. So it's not necessarily, you know, let's go fix this person's life forever. It's how can we prevent harm and how can we do what's best for this person, which might be just stabilizing them on the scene, creating a relationship with them where they know us and we can provide that service. And another example that I love to give is, you know, one of our members, Amelia James, she does de-escalation workshops for businesses. And they always say, like, who can we call? They don't want to call police. But say, for example, someone walks in a restaurant and is acting erratically and not leaving, they could call and request Knoxville Heart. They would come. They have the de-escalation skills to get that person out of the restaurant. Maybe they don't want to go on to further services, but we could prevent that escalation in that situation. So your second question was about, do we have a proposal? Yes, we have a proposal that we've worked on. It's $400,000, and it funds 3 employees and a van and a bunch of other startup costs. It also includes a medical supervisor, which will be necessary if we have a medic on the team, and a outfitted van and consultation from Cahoots and Denver Star. So that's $400,000 for a 1-year pilot program, and it would be 1 van. So our data would be limited. We likely would start in one area of the city so that we could really focus in and track that data. And sorry, what was your third question?
That third question myself.
I was trying to keep track.
Right, no. My time is up, so, okay, thank you.
I'll
Thank
see
you.
a couple other people's lights on. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just. Sure.
Okay.
I don't really have a question, just more of a, it's, you know, we've talked, I think, a little bit about, you know, some of this comes from not feeling like you have a place at the table. And so even though you may disagree, this is my just ask of you, is even though you may disagree with the co-responder model fundamentally because it has a police officer in there, they're still seeing hundreds of folks. And so there's got to be some things that can be learned that would inspire or inform your program, because I think it's a very important when you ask to be heard to also listen, because the existing provider doesn't agree with all of the things that you're going to recommend. And so I think this is part of the challenge. We all have to kind of open our ears and hear one another. And if you want to speak to McNabb, I'm sure there's 10 people here that can connect you to it.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you something that you didn't know. They're going to tell you something you disagree with. But
I completely agree, and it's something that we need to do. And to be honest with you, our capacity is very limited. We've been doing this for 3 years, so as we grow our capacity, I hope that we can have more conversations with more people.
Right on.
So I completely agree with that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Testerman?
Thank you. Ms. Riffwald, I'm just curious, so the city orchestrated a workshop, the SIMS workshop, in partnership with McNabb. Were you all there?
We had a member there, but she was representing her employer, so she could not speak to HART at that time. And the other members were unfortunately able to attend because it was during the workday and they couldn't take time off.
Okay, so.
But we have seen that data.
Okay, so it wasn't, I mean, as you just mentioned, as far as McNabb and their participation in the co-responder, that wasn't a catalyst for not participating?
Oh, no, it was purely, you know, we have therapists on our roll who have full days of sessions. We just could not make it work during the workday. But we did have someone there who has told us how it went. They just couldn't speak on HART's behalf because they were there for their employer.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Gill, would you mind expanding a little bit as far as the results of that workshop and just doing a little more of a deep dive on it?
Certainly, and this is a summary based on the final report, which I know we shared with council as part of your budget hearings earlier this month. So the strategic intercept mapping workshop did openly talk about alternative response. The process, when you lay it all out, and again, you can read the report, that did not identify alternative response as a key need, but it did validate co-response. And in several parts of the report, you talk about, to Councilwoman McKenzie's point, where you go next. And so discussions around the need for case management, for example, I think as your resolution points out, it discusses kind of the gaps that we have in our community around housing, around transportation. So that it did think about the ways that we already have new types of resources, such as the BHUC or the empath unit, to respond to the needs of people with behavioral or mental health disorders. It did identify the need to expand and strengthen co-response, not just within KPD, but also within other jurisdictions that serve our community, for example, UTPD, the Sheriff's Office. It supported the empath unit and the need for additional treatment facilities in real time to help people get access to mental health resources more quickly, but it did not recommend pursuit of the alternative response model at this time. Again, not undermining the value of the system, but just kind of ranking it in the general prioritization as something that would fall below the co-response program and making sure that that is prioritized.
Vice Mayor Roberto?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, what I've heard in this discussion is support for this model, support from the administration, support from council. There was a word that Council Member Thomas said just a little bit ago when he was discussing this, and he said the word unity. And I think there's an actual opportunity here to leave today with unanimous support for this model, but from the discussion, it's very clear that some amendments are going to have to be made in order to do that. You know, we haven't had a motion yet at all on this. We've had a lot of good discussion. I'm glad we have. You know, but I think we're at a point where we need to decide what we're going to do here. And you know, I didn't bring the resolution, so I'm not going to propose any amendments. But I think it's pretty clear from the discussion what those amendments would be. I'd be willing to support that if we did that, but that's up to Councilmember Parker because she brought the resolution. But I do think it's time to move on.
Councilmember Parker?
Sorry, excuse me. I agree, Vice Mayor Roberto. I think we've had a really healthy discussion tonight, and I really appreciate everyone's willingness to engage in that discussion and weigh in and give us some clarity of where you stand at the moment on this issue. There's certainly a lot of support around the table, but it sounds like the resolution could use a little more work. So one thing I would like to do is make a motion to postpone the resolution until our June 27th meeting, allowing council members time to engage with community members, lift up the amendments that they would like to see in order to support it, and let's see if we can come back in 4 weeks and walk away with a unanimous vote in favor of forming a task force.
I'll second that motion to postpone to July 22nd.
Motion made to postpone.
June 22nd, I'm sorry.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Vice Mayor Roberto to postpone this item until June 27th. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Council members, let's take a little break to use the bathroom or whatever. We'll reconvene at 8:43.
Literally solving.
Council members, it's 8:43, 10 minutes after, oh, now it's 11 minutes, so let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members present, 6. Let's go ahead and reconvene this meeting and move forward with the rest of the agenda. Next item is D.
11D is a resolution expressing appreciation to Knoxville's Community Development Corporation for the donation of property located at 0 Texas Avenue and authorizing the mayor to execute all documents necessary to accept said donation.
5th District. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry. 11E is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Davis H. Elliott Construction Company Incorporated for on-call services for traffic signal detector loops for an annual amount not to exceed $45,000 for a one-year term with 2 optional one-year renewal terms.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11F is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Integrated Response System LLC for on-call services for traffic signal detector loops for an annual amount not to exceed $45,000 for a one-year term with 2 optional one-year renewal terms.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11G is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Seed Incorporated to provide an amount not to exceed $50,000 in community development block grant funding to support its green construction program.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11H is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Connect Ministries to provide an amount not to exceed $37,000 in community development block grant funding for workforce case management and transportation service to approximately 35 individuals through the Good Neighbors Program.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11I is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Neighborhood Housing Incorporated to provide an amount not to exceed $162,687 in community development block grant funding to support its Knox Workforce Development Program.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11J is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Neighborhood Housing Incorporated to provide an amount not to exceed $325,000 in community development block grant funding to support Operation Backyard, its minor home repair program.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11K is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for and accept a grant award from the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs Patrick Leahy Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Award of $44,800 over a 2-year term or period with a required 50% local match for a total amount of $89,600 to provide funding for the purchase of bullet-resistant vests for the Knoxville law enforcement officers.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11L is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Keep Knoxville Beautiful Incorporated to provide litter prevention, litter collection, graffiti removal services, and awareness and education efforts throughout the city of Knoxville for an amount not to exceed $100,000 annually.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Council members, I just want to say that, like you, one of the most frequent complaints I get about issues in Knoxville has to do with litter. And we've heard loud and clear those concerns. Our public service crews have done a stellar job doing what they can, but, and we've also, as you know, expanded our mowing crews to clean up litter in the winter. And later this agenda is an item to continue river cleanup with IAMS. But Keep Knoxville Beautiful, this is an expanded connection and resources for them that they're going to continue doing additional litter patrols and go hand in hand with some of our existing efforts. And this will also help keep Knoxville a clean and welcoming city. So I'm excited about this expansion of their services. I think the community will really appreciate having less litter in our community. And hopefully, you know, the biggest way is to have a litter-free community is just not to throw down on K-Town in the first place. So hopefully this will turn that around a little bit. Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Singh?
Thank you, Mayor. Are we still using inmate labor for litter pickup and other projects?
Mr. Brace?
No, we've not been able to utilize that. Unfortunately, it's been, we've missed that service. It's been really important to handle many cleanups, especially cleanups within our creeks. Really, COVID ended that program and the ability to obtain those services.
Well, then this sounds like a good decision to move forward.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11M is a resolution authorizing the mayor to amend an agreement with Clean Earth Alabama Incorporated to increase the cost to provide transportation and disposal services for the hazardous wastes collected through the joint city-county household hazardous waste collection program for an estimated amount of $56,664.57 annually, plus collection of batteries and DOT transportation containers at an estimated cost of $10,000 annually.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Councilmember Ryder.
Yeah, I don't know if Mr. Weth is still here or someone from his team, but.
Mr. Weth is here.
Get to run up. I guess my question is more of a comment. I'm curious how much the volume is, because honestly, I think this number is, I know it's an increase, but I think it's pretty decent sounding of a number considering.
Are you asking the volume? Oh, sorry, Chad
Yeah,
Weth,
like,
City
what's the
Public Service
volume?
Director.
Like, how much of the content that comes in through the transfer station falls into this?
I'd have to get you the exact numbers on how much. I mean, you know, they take anything from motor oil to aerosol cans to oil-based paints to, again, batteries. So I'd have to get you the exact number on each material if that's what you're asking.
I'm curious how we compare to other cities. I just think that sounds like a very reasonable amount of money.
Yeah, so only 4 cities, the big 4 cities in Tennessee, have a dedicated household hazardous waste facility. So I should say a permitted facility. There's other ones that will take certain products, but not as many products as we do. So I'll say over the years, we've been a model for the other cities of how to run it. So I've not visited all of them. I've only visited a few of them, but we do very well compared to them.
And people have to show their ID, right? Do they have to be city residents, or we take from outside?
They do. This past year, the state actually funded a little bit of, the facility is funded through the city and the county and the state. Part of the state funding was depending on us taking it from anywhere. Okay. So you do have to be a resident, but even if you are just outside of Knoxville, you can still take it there now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Weth. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11N is a resolution authorizing the mayor to amend and extend an agreement with Waste Connections of Tennessee Incorporated for the collection of all household garbage and recycling materials with the city of Knoxville for an estimated amount of $468,000 annually.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11O is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with IAMS Nature Center to provide trash and debris removal services for the waterways from Forks of the River to the end of Sequoia Park for an amount not to exceed $50,000 annually.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11P is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for and, if awarded, accept an energy efficiency and conservation block grant from the United States Department of Energy in the amount of $239,720 with no local match required to develop various energy-efficient strategies through projects to build a clean and equitable energy economy for the community.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11Q is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with True Grip and Lighting Incorporated to provide the stage, lighting, and production equipment and labor for the festival on the 4th in an annual amount not to exceed $61,196, with the option to extend the agreement to include Festival on the 4th events in 2024 and 2025.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12A is an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 2, and Chapter 6, Article 6, Sections 6-137, 6-140, 6-145, 6-152, 6-153, and Article 7, Section 6-181, and Chapter 13, Article 1, Sections 13-5, and Article 4, Sections 13-15, 13-145, 13-146, 13-147, and 13-148 of the Knoxville City Code to reflect the transfer of duties from the Director of Plans Review and Building Inspections to the Director of Public Service, and amend the definitions of Codes Official and Director of Public Service and Director of Plans Review and Building Inspections.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. I just want to thank Mr. Weth. Where did you go back there for agreeing to take this back into your department? You all do amazing work, and I'm confident that you'll do a great job on this responsibility as well. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12B is an ordinance to amend and adopt the fiscal years 2024-2029 Knoxville Capital Improvements Program, including the fiscal year 2024 capital improvements budget. City of Knoxville applicant, all districts.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Public forum, we have a few people signed up for public forum. First is Maricino Jones. Ms. Jones, if you could start by saying your name and address for the record, you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Maricino Jones, 792 Lula Powell Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37915. And I am actually returning to ask you a lovely question, Miss Mayor. Did you find out what City Code had to say about my issue? Was there any update or follow-up with that? Because you know what, from the look on your face, no ma'am, you did not. Even though I had already done it, and that was your response to me at the previous meeting we had, guess what? Still an issue. And I actually stood here tonight and listened to a service that could really be beneficial for me, considering the fact that it still sounds like I have the airport landing on top of my roof every single day. Now, the reason why I came back to see you today was not just to give you my beautiful face or my boastful voice. It is to, again, ask you, why did you refer me to a place that I had already spoken on, which is City Code, the last time, even made a very valid point of a home burning down that I had previous reported to City Code that allowed another family to move in and lose all of their stuff? Why did you refer me to someone who doesn't care? Is it because they're just like you? Is it because they actually have the authority to sit there, have a smirk on their face, and just say, oh, we'll refer you to City Code and find out how that turns out? Did you do your research? Because it's still an issue. You want to know how my apartment complex talks to me, who is a multi-corporation running this place? Oh, well, you know, 3 years ago I hung myself over the edge of the building, which is what my maintenance man told me. Ironically, I've been there for 4 years, only reported this problem as of last year, so unless he was either A, psychic, or B, flat out telling me a lie to pacify me, as if I'm a 22-year-old or an 18-year-old, like I didn't know the day that I did my walkthrough of my apartment if that noise was previously there or not. So yeah, Miss Ma'am, what are we gonna do about this issue? Because I still can't sleep at night. Guess who literally had to break down because, as we just sat here and talked about the Hearts program, and literally had to contact Miss Constance Every in the middle of the night because guess what? I can't take it anymore. My head hurts. I'm now taking more Motrin than a doctor will even recommend me to take because of gasping headaches as soon as I walk through my door. I am giving money to an apartment complex to be able to enjoy my balcony, and I can't do that. Why? Is what I hear as metal is rubbing against metal from my front door to my bedroom. I am a prisoner in my own apartment. I have nowhere else to go. Why? Let's see here, we've already talked about homelessness, we've already talked about mental, oh, that's right. If I was to call right now and tell them exactly how I was feeling, you know where I would go? Moccasin bin. Instead of us addressing the issue, and my issue is why are these corporations allowed to get away with it? I keep hearing about funding. You guys just raised taxes. But yet this big time corporation has no punishment whatsoever. We're literally gonna sit here and play it off like, oh, I've just lost my mind and decide to complain about this out of nowhere? Or are we actually gonna do something about it? Because from what I've heard in this meeting so far, the proper communication that's being lost is sitting right here at this board. You literally had staff, authorized staff, that could be helping me right now, this very moment, because none of you guys are doing it except for Ms. Parker. Thank you so much for funding that program. Thank you so much for backing that program. And I pray to God that when you guys are done, your voice is actually heard, because you are the only one that is actually taking, excuse me, ma'am, I could have swore you just had a teacher, a retired teacher. And that's what lets me know you don't care about anything I had to say prior to this and what I have to say now. Because every time I'm talking to you, I'm looking directly at you. And she just broke that down earlier in the meeting. So with that being said, you will be seeing me again until my problem is resolved, because it's a problem. It's a mental problem. It's a building nuisance problem. And it's something you need to have done before you leave this office, is to make sure your citizens are heard.
5 minutes. Your 5 minutes are up. Thank you very much. Next person signed up to speak is Tina Sparks. Ms. Sparks, is she still present?
I think she left. Also, Nikki left.
Okay. I don't see anyone named Nikki anyways, but.
Oh.
That concludes public forum. Council, without objection, this meeting is adjourned.